When martial arts doesn't teach you morals, wrestling, and the story of Jimmy Savile. The old adage is that martial arts teaches you morals and how to behave correctly. This has been the selling point of various disciplines for years and is often preached by Joe Rogan on his podcast. The idea is that training will remove your ego and humble you. And whilst this happens a lot of the time, it's not a universal thing that everyone experiences. For instance, when someone is new, they will likely get humbled by better practitioners of the art. However, what happens if they stick at it for 5 years or more? In this case, the chance is that they'll get pretty good, and if they still have a bad attitude, then arguably martial arts can amplify their problematic behaviour, as they now feel tougher than ever due to being more confident when it comes to fighting. Sadly, this is what happened with the British sex criminal Jimmy Savile. Born in Leeds in 1926, Jimmy Savile went on to become a professional wrestler. Although this profession isn't too common in England these days, the North had an active wrestling community at one point and was the home of catch wrestling. Northern England is where the likes of Billy Robinson came from, whose catch wrestling lives on today with the likes of Kazushi Sakuraba and Josh Barnett. During his 20s, Jimmy Savile would wrestle professionally in a style that combined catch wrestling and WWE style techniques. In short, it was a combination of entertainment and technical grappling. There is still footage online that shows Savile wrestling, including takedowns, joint locks, and other parts of the martial art. In one documentary, Savile claimed to have over 107 bouts, which shows he was a fairly experienced grappler. Throughout his life and career, Jimmy Savile would be quite open about his deviant behaviour. When he wasn't around children, he would physically abuse adults instead. In one interview, Savile claimed he would lock people up in a basement as a nightclub manager and beat them up. If you've ever fought a wrestler, then you'll understand they have a tenacity that can't really be matched. When fighting, wrestlers have intense cardio and stamina, as well as freak strength. No doubt, this would have given Savile the edge when he was running nightclubs. Sadly, this is an example of how martial arts can be used for negative purposes. Whilst most wrestlers probably use their powers for good and are harmless to regular day people, some are more predatory and will use their powers for bad. In fact, many gyms have bullies who seem to get a kick out of beating their fellow practitioners. Whilst this isn't on the same level as what Savile did, it still shows that martial arts don't always spiritually guide those who are training it. Sometimes it can do the complete opposite. During his wrestling career, Savile took a beating by British wrestler Adrian Street. Interestingly, the footage of their bout has survived and can still be viewed online. Here we can see Street throwing Savile around, grabbing his hair and punching him with force to the back of the head. This is an example of how wrestling can go beyond acting, and the reason for this was because Street was sick of Savile and his deviant behaviour. According to Street, he beat Jimmy Savile black and blue and even tried to pull his hair out. In an interview, Street claimed, "All the fighters on the circuit used to boast about their conquests, but Savile used to go on and on about young girls who'd wait in line for him outside his dressing room." Apparently, like many others at the time, Street wasn't completely clued up about Savile's dark habits, and added, "Had I known then what I know about him now, I'd have given him an even bigger hiding." If anything, this is a good example of martial arts and how they can be used to defeat evil. While Savile didn't seem to learn from this lesson, this would have surely given him something to think about and made him think twice about his actions around Adrian Street. Over the years, there have been many cases of deviant martial arts practitioners. Although sad, Jimmy Savile's case isn't in isolation, and there are plenty of people who train and even teach martial arts who are like this. Ultimately, it's up to the martial arts community to try and call these people out for who they are. Although brutal, we can all learn from Adrian Street and his own version of dishing out tough justice. In conclusion, just because someone trains martial arts, it doesn't mean they're greater than others, at least in a mental sense. This is a dated narrative that is far too generalized and pompous. Instead, we should be focusing on our lives outside of martial arts and trying to cherry pick the best parts of training to help ourselves and others around us. At the same time, training martial arts certainly isn't the answer to life's problems, and as seen, it can be used for both good and bad.